Hi everyone, it's your boy Robert here, and today I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about teaching ESL in China, from the qualifications that you need, applying for jobs, and eventually making that final leap into the great unknown. Just a quick disclaimer before I start. I'm not advertising for any companies. I'm not an official recruiter, and no, I don't work for the Chinese government. The rules and regulations that will be covered in this video are from personal experience. In China, rules and regulations change often, so in a few years this information might be less accurate. Let's start with the basics. ESL stands for English as a Secondary Language, and the minimum qualifications needed to come and teach ESL or another subject in China is to only have a BA degree. A BA degree in anything is acceptable, whether it would be in philosophy, psychology, sociology, geography, etc. Whether these degrees are school subjects or not is irrelevant, unless you are teaching a specific school subject. Then you will have to have a degree for that specific subject. But regarding ESL, anything goes. The purpose of the degree is to probably justify a higher average salary compared to Chinese citizens, and to ensure quality control of the type of teachers that the government and schools will expose their students to. So let's start with the qualifications that the Chinese government recognizes, and those would be what I call full degrees, which could be a BA, which is Bachelor of Arts, BS, which is Bachelor of Science, BEd, which is Bachelors of Education, Masters and PhD. So as far as the Chinese government is concerned, these are the only important qualifications. When your school agent applies for a work permit online at the Migration Bureau, aka the Enter and Exit Bureau, only these qualifications can be entered on the system. However, there are numerous ESL qualifications that is not recognized by the Chinese government, but is definitely helpful not to only help you become a better ESL teacher, but also helps you secure more lucrative teaching positions at different educational institutions with higher pay. If you have a BA, you can become a qualified teacher by doing a PGCE, which stands for Postgraduate Certificate in Education, which takes 1 year to complete. There are short 1-month certificates that you can do that gives you the necessary tools to start your ESL career. TEFL, which stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language, TESOL, which stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, and CELTA, which also stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. I'm just going to quickly tell you the difference between TEFL and TESOL. TEFL certification is needed if you plan to teach English abroad. Basically, if you will be teaching English as a language to non-English speakers in their native country. The TESOL is designed to provide more flexibility for teachers who are uncertain of their ESL goals. This certification allows you to teach ESL in your native country or travel to other countries to teach English as a secondary language. CELTA used to be a qualification that specialized in teaching adults and used to stand for Cambridge Certificate in English Language Teaching to Adults. But now it stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, to be more inclusive and flexible. Out of these 3 different qualifications, the CELTA holds the most weight, as it can only be endorsed through Cambridge. That means the certificate holds a legitimate high quality standard. In a nutshell, all 3 qualifications serve the same purpose, and some are more prevalent than others in different parts of the world. The reason why the Chinese government doesn't recognize these qualifications are because they are certificates, and most of them aren't even from legitimate institutions. You really shouldn't stress about which one is more important, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. If you are interested in studying ESL certificates, there are many institutions all over the world, and the best way to find out the most suitable option for you is to simply go on the internet. You can do ESL qualifications at universities, or you can do them in training centers found throughout the big cities in English-speaking countries. There are also organizations in ESL countries like Asia, the Americas, and the Middle East that offer a holiday course program. The good thing about these organizations is that they can also provide you with employment opportunities after you complete the course. As you do your training, you will also gain some cultural awareness about that specific country. For example, if you book to do a TESOL course in Thailand, you go there for 1 or 2 months, you meet other trainees, learn about the culture of that country, and do your studies. The training camp will be in contact with schools and recruiters, and you will easily get employment when you are done. Now that we have the qualifications out of the way, I can show you what I did to apply for a job. I went to a website on the internet called Teachaway. The good thing about this approach is that schools looking for people on these websites are willing to help you relocate from your home country to their country. If you have a friend in China, for example, you could get WeChat contacts for schools and recruiters. Unfortunately, this approach could be less fruitful because many schools don't want to deal with the expenses and bureaucracy of hiring ESL teachers from outside of their country and would rather focus on hiring foreigners internally. So this is the website that I used, Teachaway. What's nice about this website is that it's absolutely free to use, and it also offers opportunities to do teaching and ESL certificates for discount prices. It's free to create a profile with your basic information and your CV. Once you are registered, applying for jobs is just a click away. There are always new job openings, so remember to check in often. You can search for openings in particular countries or particular positions. Please keep in mind not to apply for jobs or positions that you are not qualified for or not interested in, because you will only waste time and energy. Usually, for the most part, jobs are offered through recruiters that work for companies or organizations. Initially, you won't immediately contact the school. There are thousands of job offers, but remember that not all of these jobs are suitable for you. As you scroll down the list, you can see basic information like country, positions, and starting dates. So what companies usually do is they will bundle similar positions in a particular country together. So this is what you should look for. As you can see, this website is not just for ESL teachers, but for subject teachers and school administrative staff as well. This is a website dedicated to teachers from all walks of life from all around the world. There are many education terms such as STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics. There are also French teachers and music teachers needed all around the world. Even Colombia needs English teachers. I heard a story about a young South African girl once that travels the world by teaching English for a year in every different country, which is a bit much for me, but definitely sounds exciting. Eclipse is looking for ESL teachers all around South Korea. You can go in and have a look for more details. You can sign up and create a profile using Facebook, Google or LinkedIn. I used LinkedIn when I applied for jobs. So what I did is I applied for jobs in Thailand during 2018 using Teachaway, which is where I originally wanted to go. I also applied for jobs in the United Arab Emirates and in China to see what will come up in these different locations. I was approached by a company called Bright Scholar, which has schools all around the world, but most of their schools are in China. The recruiter did a short Skype interview with me at 1 a.m. in the morning because I was in South Africa and she was in China, so time zones is something to keep in mind. She was happy with the way I presented myself and my qualifications, and she said this was phase 1. Phase 2 is to have an interview with the Foreign Affairs Supervisor of the specific schools that are interested. 1 week later, a school near Shanghai contacted me via Skype while I was teaching in class in South Africa. I quickly went to the back storeroom to do the interview, even though I kindly asked them not to conduct the interview during my working hours. In any case, I unfortunately didn't land the job, and the initial recruiter from Bright Scholar said, "No sweat, there is another school in Changsha that wants to conduct an interview next week," and I accepted. The Foreign Affairs teacher of Country Garden Venice Bilingual School contacted me via Skype the following week at 3 a.m. in the morning. I remember getting in my suit and feeling silly, but I managed to get the job. This, however, was the easy part. The great struggle was yet to come. So before I get on with the story, I'll tell you about myself. In 2014, I graduated with a BA in Geography. I worked for a government school in South Africa as a geography teacher teaching grade 4s. The principal at the school convinced me to do a PGCE. At the time, I didn't know what it was, and I was still new to academia and the education field. The reason why I did the PGCE was because I could get a better salary and improve my chances of employment. So off I went to my old university to do my PGCE for 1 year, after teaching for 1 year. Ever since I was in high school, I wanted to leave SA because crime is rampant. There is a 25 to 30% unemployment, high inflation, systemic racism from all races, and I also wanted a sense of adventure exploring the world. After I got my PGCE in 2017, I started researching the requirements to go to teach abroad, and many young South Africans were doing it, so I wanted in on the action. Contrary to reality, I thought it was a bureaucratic requirement to have a TESOL to teach abroad. So after working at a high school as an art teacher for 6 months, I quit my job and went to another university to do a 1-month intense contact TESOL. To be honest, it was very difficult. The English grammar is more detailed than what was covered in high school as a learner. The teaching methods were opposite of what I was used to. For example, in ESL, the student talking time must be high and the teacher talking time must be low, 70% to 30% respectively. Your lesson staging has to be followed to the letter, with time management to the minute. But nonetheless, I persevered. After my TESOL, I went to go work for another primary school teaching sports and life skills for 6 months. So now I was a qualified licensed teacher with a TESOL, 2 years teaching experience and a job waiting for me in China. I was starting to get nervous at this stage because my lifelong dream of leaving SA for good was becoming a reality. But I also didn't want to let this opportunity slip through my fingers. So I kept close contact with my foreign affairs supervisor at the school in China via WeChat to prepare the paperwork to go to China. First, I needed to get a Z visa in my passport before I can hop on a plane for China. Now, a Z visa is a temporary work visa that is only valid for 30 days and only allows you to enter China once. Once in China, the school needs to apply for a residence permit and a proper working visa. In order to get a Z visa, there are some steps to follow. The first thing is for you to sign a contract with the school. Then the school will issue you an official letter of invitation for employment. I was told by my supervisor that I needed to go to the Chinese consulate to get all my documents authenticated for the government in China. Now, I was working in a small town and the nearest Chinese consulate was a 4-hour drive to Johannesburg, and the consulate was only open during the week. So I took leave from school and drove to the Chinese consulate in Johannesburg. When I got there, they gave me a list of all the organizations that I need to go to before they can issue me a letter for the visa processing center. This is where things got complicated. All my qualifications needed to be authenticated in a specific way. I needed a full health check from a hospital that needed to be authenticated and a police clearance certificate that also needed to be authenticated. I had to go to the Department of Education in Pretoria, the capital, which is about a 40-minute drive from Johannesburg. I had to get a copy of every qualification I had, the BA, PGCE and TESOL. Then I had to go to the Department of International Relations to get the seal of authentication and then get the seal of approval from the Chinese consulate. For the police clearance, it was getting the document from any police station, then the seal from the Department of International Relations, and then the seal of approval from the Chinese consulate. For the health check, I had to go to a government hospital in South Africa for a full health check. Seeing that it was only for bureaucratic reasons, it was not worth going to an expensive private hospital. At the hospital, they checked for all STDs, blood pressure, heart condition. They did a lung x-ray, did a chemical pathology diagnosis, and recorded things like height and weight. To be honest, there were also a lot of other lab results that didn't make sense to me. I had to take the hospital results to the HPCSA, which stands for the Health Professionals Council of South Africa, to authenticate the hospital records and doctors involved. The health check had to go to the Department of International Relations for the seal of authentication and then to the Chinese consulate for the seal of approval. Of course, I tried to authenticate all the documents together to save time, energy and money. After everything was done at the Chinese consulate, I had to go to another part of Johannesburg to the Chinese Visa Processing Center to get the Z visa in my passport. That only took a few hours and they immediately issued the Z visa in my passport. After receiving my passport, I went back home and finished the school year, resigned, got my letter of recommendation, sold my car, sold all my furniture, booked a flight and left South Africa all within a span of 2 weeks. When I got to China, believe it or not, I had to do another full medical examination. At least the school paid for everything. You won't believe me when I say that the medical reports were inconsistent with each other. For example, in SA, I had slightly unhealthy lungs and a normal liver. However, in China, my lungs were considered normal, but I had a fatty liver. Go figure. In any case, within a week I went to my supervisor to the Enter-Exit Bureau in Changsha with all my documents and I got a working visa valid for 1 year, which you can use to enter and exit China as you please. And I got a residence permit as well. Everything was finally done and dusted. Basically, China was the land of honey and milk for ESL teachers, like what was expected. The school gave me a bachelor's apartment, 3 free meals a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, a salary of 10,000 RMB a month, a 10,000 RMB bonus every year for completing the contract, and only 15 teaching hours a week with no office hours. Now, in China there are many different types of institutions where you can teach ESL. I'll start with your low work hours, low pay jobs. Universities and bilingual schools usually offer free apartments and a salary between 10 and 15,000 RMB a month. However, the working hours are usually very low. Training schools and international schools usually don't offer free accommodation, but do give you a substantial housing allowance. Usually training schools and international schools make you work 40 hours a week, 20 teaching hours and 20 office hours, and offer a salary from 15,000 RMB to as high as 30,000 RMB a month. It is also important to keep in mind that all schools that legally hire you must get social insurance in case you get seriously sick or injured in China, which is how things should be. Now keep in mind there are many factors that can influence your salary. First and foremost, the type of city will impact your salary. In China, we have first, second and third tier cities. Your first tier cities are big cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, etc. These cities offer the highest salaries, but they also have the highest living expenses and competition in these cities are tough. Your second tier cities are medium-sized cities like Changsha, Kunming, Suzhou, etc. These cities are the best in my opinion because there aren't too many foreigners, so competition is low, but you can still have foreign friends. You have all the luxuries that big cities have to offer. You have very low living expenses with only a slightly lower salary. Your third tier cities are very small cities where salaries are low and living expenses are very low. You will probably be the only foreigner in the city, which can be isolating. And even though competition is non-existent, the market for ESL teachers is also non-existent. So do your research on a city before you make a final decision to move, as I did, so that you don't find yourself where you don't want to be. There is another factor that people need to consider when teaching ESL abroad, and that is native English speakers versus non-native English speakers. Anyone with English as a first language from birth is a native English speaker. But in practice, with ESL jobs, you will often find that employers and governments use this phrase to refer to people that are citizens of one of the following countries: USA, UK, Ireland, Canada, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. People from other countries are considered non-native English speakers. Of course, in reality, this doesn't mean anything, and it is a basic generalization that does have severe consequences, unfortunately. For example, schools will use this guideline to pay non-natives a lower salary. Technically, in China, schools are only allowed to legally hire native English speakers. However, I personally know non-natives that legally work at schools as ESL teachers. They will usually need above average ESL qualifications, or I guess there are loopholes that a school could use to exploit, like getting a subject teacher from another country to teach in English. Example, an Egyptian history teacher that teaches in English. But in reality, they will just be a normal ESL teacher. The government will usually also just support the school's wishes as best as they can, as long as all the necessary paperwork is in order, like having a degree, a health check, and a non-criminal record. So take it with a grain of salt when I say that all you need is a BA to teach English in China. You need to have a clean criminal record from your home country, and you also need to be healthy. Of course, having ESL qualifications, work experience, and being a native English speaker will go a long way. But once you have your foot in the door, it's relatively easy to stay in China. So you are probably wondering what happens when your 1 or 2 year contract expires at the school, or when your 1 year work visa expires. Well, it's simple. If the school likes you, they will offer a new contract for you to sign, usually with little or no changes. And then 1 or 2 months before your work visa expires, they must apply for a new working visa. The government will take the same original documents from you and issue you a new working visa. You will have to do a new health check every year. However, the school will pay for all expenses involved for the renewal process. There is a time period of about 3 weeks where the government keeps your passport, but you really don't have trouble from day to day. You just can't travel abroad, of course. You will only need a new non-criminal record if you change jobs. Changing jobs in China can be tricky. The most important thing is to not break contract with your school, because the school can refuse you a letter of recommendation and even blacklist you by the government, making future work visas harder to get. Schools don't have the right to kick you out of China. However, without a job, the school is required by law to apply to cancel your work visa. And staying in China without any visa is impossible. If you are married to a Chinese citizen, you can get a spouse visa, but then you are not allowed to work. You could get a holiday visa, but then you are also not allowed to legally work. There is also a business visa, but that also doesn't permit you to work. So keep it simple. Don't break contract unless the school is willing to grant you your wish and you definitely have another job waiting for you. Otherwise, you will make things really complicated for yourself. Okay, so if you want to change jobs in China, the first thing is to get another job offer. Then you need to sign a contract with your new school. You need to tell your current school that you will leave when the current contract is up. They will need to write a letter to the government to cancel your residence permit and work visa. Only then can the new school apply for a new residence permit and work visa for you. As I mentioned before, you will need your original authenticated qualification documents, a new non-criminal record from your country of origin, and a new health check, which is something you must do every year anyway. All this needs to be done within the time frame of your current valid working visa. I know all these rules, regulations, and procedures sound complicated, but once you are in China and you have experienced everything, it becomes second nature. Even though you might not be from South Africa, you'll still have to follow the same procedures in your own country, although the different relevant organizations might have different names and will obviously be in different cities. Now, there is a myth that ESL teachers are poor and that it is a dead-end career. This, however, couldn't be further from the truth. I recently completed my CELTA certificate in China and plan on doing my master's degree in education through a British or an American university via distance learning. And these qualifications open doors for leadership positions, or at the very least provide more job opportunities with more pay. For example, I recently changed jobs from Country Garden Venice Bilingual School, where I've worked for 4 years, to the Hunan University of Information and Technology. The university is giving me 16,000 RMB a month, a free bachelor's apartment, and I only need to teach 12 hours a week, no office hours. I also have 4 months a year off and I only work 3 to 4 days a week. In all honesty, it's a dream job for many, including myself. At least for now, the government has brought in a temporary policy that doesn't require a new non-criminal record from your home country. This is due to the global lockdowns and logistical difficulties. So I mentioned earlier in the video that I would discuss why the difference between CELTA, TEFL and TESOL isn't important. From personal experience, I've done many job interviews in China, from training schools to big international schools. And what I'm about to say is sacrilege. But it couldn't be further from the truth. Most schools don't care about your qualifications. In fact, 2 years ago, I did an interview at an international school, and one of the leaders, who was a British man, didn't even know what a CELTA was when I brought it up. Now, it's understandable if the average Joe doesn't know what a CELTA is. But for a so-called ESL expert with many years teaching experience in China who doesn't know what a CELTA is, it makes you wonder how he got his job. I also did an interview with a university and an international kindergarten once, and the interviewers didn't even know what a TESOL was. I was absolutely shocked, because how do you know if someone is suitable for a job if you yourself don't even know what you are looking for? Unfortunately, this is a societal problem in China, and the problem stems from the parents. They have a dream that their child needs to go to Switzerland to become the next Beethoven, or to the US to become the next billionaire tycoon, or to the UK to become the next Isaac Newton. In the parents' view, learning English from a white, 22-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed person with masters in linguistics and 10 years teaching experience is the only way to achieve that goal, because the accent is what's most important to them. So, unfortunately for most ESL positions in China, you will be nothing but a well-paid poster boy. Ads will often say, Europeans only, or occasionally, whites only. However, the ads quickly get called out by ESL teachers, Chinese citizens, and even the government, which should rightfully be so. The ESL industry was a mess when I came to China, and still needs a bit of a clean-up, because a good English teacher shouldn't be based on nationality and skin color, but rather on qualifications, experience, and ability to teach English in an effective way. There has even been the odd school here and there that has even refused to interview me because I'm South African. They never elaborate why. In any case, I don't let it get to me, because I'm looking for a school that is looking for a good ESL teacher, not a glorified poster boy. One school I did an interview with even wanted me to lie to the parents and tell them I'm from Canada and not South Africa. I just stood up and walked out, because I'm not willing to become a sellout for some deluded fantasy. Now, it is important to note that working at any school other than the one that the visa is issued for is illegal. So part-time work is illegal. Teaching VIP students in your apartment is also illegal. Now, you can teach VIPs and do part-time work if it is voluntary and for non-profit. So if it is for undeclared money, it would count as tax evasion. If you were to make money from part-time work or teaching VIP students, you could make anything from 200 to 300 RMB an hour, at times even more. So in 2021, the government of China released a policy making English a non-compulsory subject in government schools. They have also made it illegal for training schools to teach English, which was a very big deal. There were also other aspects to the policy. Example, training schools are not allowed to teach during holidays and weekends, and new licenses will not be issued to new training schools. The reason for this move is so that the children are under less pressure to do extra classes outside of school, which is very stressful, considering that some parents force their children to do many classes on Saturdays, Sundays and holidays. The financial burden that the parents have is crazy, with some parents spending more than 50% of their salary on education alone. These are the official reasons. The less official reasons for the policy are that the government doesn't want the private education sector to monopolize and become too powerful. Furthermore, it is more difficult for the Department of Education to manage and monitor thousands of training schools versus only a few hundred big schools. I am very happy about the government policy and feel that it was about time that they did something about what was, in my opinion, a septic cancer to the ESL industry in China. Now, to give you an idea, more than 50% of all foreign teachers were working in training schools. At the time, this meant that in just a few months, these teachers had to find new jobs or be forced to go back to their country of origin if they can't get a spouse, holiday, or business visa. Firstly, there wasn't enough work for all the foreign teachers. And the second aspect that forced many foreigners to leave China is that many, in fact most of the foreigners in training schools, didn't have the correct paperwork to legitimately work in China in the first place. When I was still in South Africa, I heard stories about South Africans getting kicked out of China, and at the same time many went over and bragged that they were making good money without any qualifications or working visas. And I always thought that these types of people were far and wide in between. However, when I came to China, the reality slowly dawned on me. Gradually, many of the foreigners that I met in my area confessed to me that they don't have the right visas to work, and they didn't even go to university. These people were from all nationalities: Canadians, British, South Africans, and Americans. I met a Canadian guy in a bar once, and he told me that in Canada he cleaned the snow off of people's roofs, then came to China on a holiday visa to teach English, and that every 3 months he goes to Hong Kong to do a visa run, because a holiday visa is only valid for 3 months. I knew another Canadian guy that used to pack the supermarket shelves back in Canada. He managed to get a 2-year business visa and worked as an ESL teacher. He told me that he wasn't qualified but lied to the parents of the training school and told them that he had a degree in early childhood development. Eventually, he got deported because for a second time in a row, he let his business visa expire before applying for a new one. There is a British fellow that I knew that also came to China on a business visa, but eventually married a Chinese girl, got a spouse visa, and worked illegally at training schools. This was a real scumbag because he would cheat on his wife, and eventually when he realized he couldn't work at training centers anymore because of the new policy, he managed to get fake academic documents in order to work legally in China. Now, before the new government policy was implemented, almost all of the illegal ESL teachers would be at the training schools. The training schools saved money because they don't have to pay for social insurance, tax, or deal with the expenses and complications of applying for work visas. This would mean that the illegal ESL teachers would not pay tax either, didn't have to do annual health checks, or provide non-criminal records. Wonderful, isn't it? But there's more. Every time a foreigner enters China, they have to report to their local police station within 24 hours of landing. Now, if you work at a legitimate school, the Foreign Affairs Supervisor will remind you and ensure that you do so, whereas some training centers would be oblivious to this law. Furthermore, if you change residence or move to a new apartment, you have to by law notify the police. Once again, people who work illegally or hire illegally don't follow this law. Big schools and universities won't hire illegally because they can get into serious trouble that isn't worth it for them in the long run. However, training schools take the risk. If caught, the training school and the foreigner will be fined. There are nightmare stories that are true in China, where occasionally training schools will refuse to pay an illegal foreign teacher for months on end. And unfortunately, there is nothing that the teacher can do because they are not supposed to be working in the first place. You may have also heard that for some foreigners, it is difficult or impossible to take large amounts of money out of China. Well, just like in every country in the world, before you can do an international transaction, you need to get tax clearance. You can only get an income tax number if you legally work in China. If not, you will need to explain to the government where you got the money and why you want to take it out. You can only legally take out 250,000 RMB a year out of China after you have tax clearance. So usually, when something bad happens to a foreigner in China, you read all about it in the newspapers in the Western world. Example, they were deported, arrested, or even imprisoned. What the newspapers usually never tell you is that these people are not innocent. They are people breaking the law by living and working illegally in China. A person can't just wake up one day and say, right, Today, I'll live in Italy and become an engineer. To hell with qualifications, procedures and visas. Or, oh, from tomorrow I'll be a medical doctor in Nigeria. To hell with qualifications, experience or registering with the relevant organizations. The same is for the ESL industry anyway. The Chinese government has put in their best effort to support the training school's wishes and the wishes of the parents. And they have lowered the standards for ESL teachers to a fair low in order to fulfill the demand. Unfortunately, not all, but for most training schools, chasing quick money was more important than providing honest, quality education. And the parents were naive enough to believe in the training schools and also chase dreams that were unrealistic. As for the illegal foreigners in China, their good run came to an end, and now they have to return to their countries with less money than they came in with, and no legitimate work experience. So I hope that this will serve as a warning to those who intend on doing the same. Please think of the parents, the children, and your own future before making unwise decisions. On a positive side, teaching ESL legally in China is an achievable goal for most, and if you follow the rules that I explained, you can make a success stories. Today I work in a university. I make ends meet and I have more than enough time to relax and work on my YouTube videos. I'm married to a beautiful and loving Chinese woman and have a healthy baby boy. I live in a big apartment with a nanny, and even though from this video it looks easy, the reality is a frustrating and difficult journey that took its toll on me financially. I spent thousands of dollars on studies, administrative work, and hundreds of irregular hours doing interviews and errands. But eventually I've managed to carve out a comfortable career that has a promising future. If you have watched the whole video, I've told you everything that I know about ESL in China, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thanks for watching.